Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
So we're taping on Thursday. I guess as of today, this is do we say day 7? I guess day 7, the end of a full week. So where are we on the Lewisometer for folks who just checking in? In the Obama days, Politico ran the Brooksometer, which is how David Brooks was feeling about Obama at any given moment in time, which indicated how well Obama was doing in reaching out to center-right Republicans. As I'm not in D.C., I checked with Matt Lewis to find out how is Trump doing with skeptical conservatives. So our ratings could be. I think they start at the bottom with Mussolini. They go up to Jimmy Carter, then to Warren Harding, then to Teddy Roosevelt, and then all the way to Reagan. So where on the spectrum is Matt Lewis after one full week of President Trump?
Well, first, this is the Matt Lewis spectrum, so I don't pretend that at any more that I'm representative of anything other than me. But I think he's holding.
Don't sell yourself short.
He's holding steady. I think he's in TR territory.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, of course, everything's. This is all sort of. He hasn't done anything really yet. It's still early, so it's all sort of perception, direction. But
are you saying we're not winning yet? The winning isn't already happening?
Well, he's not Reaganing yet. He's not at the Reagan. Reagan is winning. Anything else is anything below that is failure to some degree or another. Let's be honest. So he hasn't made it up to to that level.
But now I saw you on Twitter. I pay attention, and you were unnerved at the pushback over the inauguration crowd size and the attacks on the media, correct?
Well, I don't know if I'd say unnerved. I think that, it's obviously problematic that President Trump lies. However, I would say that, I've had a lot of time to deal with that and to accept that, and he is the president, for better or worse, and one could look at it as sort of well, that's just Donnie being Donnie. He lies about things like ratings and crowd size, and it's a childish thing, but there's a certain charm in that. Now, it became jarring.
There's some other lies about more substantive things. It's not just on the trivial stuff.
Yeah, well, probably that too, and that becomes much more problematic. But in terms of the size, the ratings, the crowd size, he does have an obsession with that. I do think it becomes more jarring when somebody else, like Sean Spicer, the press secretary, has to go out and defend those things. So when Trump says it, it's oh, that's just Trump being Trump. But when someone else goes out and has to tell us that 2 + 2 = 5, I actually think it becomes more jarring. And I don't know how that is going to shake out, but the Sean Spicer side of the story has been very interesting this week.
So that doesn't tip the meter down to Mussolini territory. We're still going to keep it at TR for the time being.
Yes, and I think that I'm not a historian, bro, but. But I think that so look, there are lies and there are different kind of lies. You can keep your health care if you want it, was a lie. Saying that, that a video caused Benghazi was a lie. These are different types of lies.
We won't relitigate for the time being.
Trump is a different type of liar. And if you go back in history, so part of this is, I do think that Trump is sui generis, but but then but also I think we need to put things in proper context, and then you become accused of, quote, normalizing him. So I think finding that right balance is important. Like, some of the things that Trump is being criticized for are actually things that Marco Rubio, if he were president, would be criticized for. Some of the things are things that all politicians do, and then some of them are actually kind of unique to him. But I think part of what concerns me about him, and has always concerned me about him, is the kind of authoritarian tendencies. And I think that's where that's why I cite TR right now.
Okay.
All right.
So after the inauguration, we had the women's marches all across the country. Estimates for the total participation are as high as 4.7 million, which in raw numbers would be the largest protest in American history. You could quibble and say that's not necessarily true for percentage of population, but still pretty big. And you had a reaction to it on the Daily Beast. I had a reaction to that and other things over the inaugural weekend in a Politico article titled "6 Ways Not to Resist Trump." But my overall take on the march was mostly positive. And actually, I marched myself in Boston. You were more revulsed, am I correct?
Well, not exactly. Really what I was doing is, you remember, Bill, in Too Dumb to Fail, I was somewhat critical of the Tea Party movement. And I'm not convinced that the Tea Party movement, I'll put it this way, I think that the left wants to replicate what the right did with the Tea Party movement and with the election of Donald Trump. And I think that's a really bad impulse. Number one, I'm not convinced that it will work. I think it may be counterproductive. And number two, so what did we get for all this? You could look at it and say Republicans own everything. You're going to get a Supreme Court pick. You're going to get, you got the House, you got the Senate, you got state legislatures. All that. That's awesome. We also got Donald Trump. And we got a country that's falling.
Who is TR? We
got a country that's being torn apart. And so I don't know how it's going to shake out, and I don't know if it's replicable. And so basically, my take is this, that, I've had a year to come to grips with Donald Trump, with opposing Donald Trump and seeing him win and seeing how he operates. So I've got a head start on Democrats who thought up until the morning of November or whatever, election day, that Hillary was going to win. So, in the stages of the grieving stages or whatever, they're in denial and bargaining. And, I'm at a more advanced stage than they are. And I feel no, look, I'll concede that the vast majority of protesters, and marchers were probably, good, decent people who just want a better America. But the images on television, first on Saturday, and this had nothing to do with the Women's March, but that will be conflated. On Saturday, you've got, the anarchists and protesters who were doing violence in the streets. On
Friday.
That was on Friday, on Inauguration Day. On Friday, Inauguration Day, you had the protests, the violent stuff that was not part of the Women's March. And then on Saturday, you've got the Women's March. You've got Madonna, and you've got, Ashley Judd, and a lot of the stuff that actually, fairly or not, got attention. And even Elizabeth Warren, with her arms going all over, let me tell you, that sort of preachy, thing that plays great among the liberal base, and I'm sure it gets them fired up, but I do not think will play well in middle America. And I think that what has happened is that the left's reaction to Trump is hysterical and is actually proving right what people thought the people who voted for Trump, what they thought of liberals. Do you remember that somebody, I think it might have been the Washington Free Beacon, did this this mashup video? Do you remember there was this commercial that Hillary Clinton ran all the time, and it was like this little kid like watching TV, and it was clips of like Donald Trump saying horrible things. She was bleeding out of her eyes, out of her wherever, and you know these little kids watching, and the message was that the Democratic Party is the party of family values. And Donald Trump is vulgar and is not a good person and is indecent. And I think the suggestion was that Hillary Clinton was, you know, that Democrats and liberals were actually the family values party all of a sudden. Well, somebody did a mashup of that little kid sort of looking winsomely at the TV, but playing clips from the Women's March and the P word and if Madonna saying that she like thought about burning down or blowing up the White House or whatever it was she said, I don't think this helps your cause, and that's what my article is about. I think this is counterproductive.
Well, you know, I think there is some truth in what you're saying.
Thank you.
And I said as much in my own piece. I directly responded to you in my piece.
So we're like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams or something, like writing these, you know, screeds that are being, these missives that are being, yeah, this is great stuff.
I mean, I don't think that in this case, the Madonna speech overshadowed the entire march. The bigger story of the march is just its sheer size. And that it was not the violence of Disrupt J20 on the day before. I mean, thankfully, you know, burning limos and punching Richard Spencer, that is not the main image of what came out of the Trump resistance. The main image is millions of people across the country saying, we don't support this president, we don't support the misogyny they represents. And, you know, use of the P word in this case, I don't think reflects badly on the left because it's throwing back at Trump what he said and what he did. So I don't see that as being problematic. Now, Madonna said other things that were more juvenile and I think discordant with the general love Trump's hate, we go high ethos that has generally dominated anti-Trump activism. So, you know, what I said is you should look at that as something cautionary. You know, next time we do this, let's maybe vet our celebrities better. And I think there are good models for celebrity activism. So I think you went in your piece. This is proof that liberal elitist celebrities are horrible, and liberals are elites that look down on you, and therefore they should be kind of, you know, totally sidelined. But as you've also noticed in the past, conservatives have their own celebrities. They had Ted Nugent, they had Scott Baio. Ted Nugent was grabbing his crotch 2 days before the election, saying, I got your blue America right here, black and blue. And lo and behold, look where we are today. So I don't think the left should replicate. So to your other point today, the left should not replicate every aspect of the Tea Parties because we are where we are. There are things that they did that were not smart. They didn't beat Obama in 2012. They didn't stop Obamacare. They didn't stop the Recovery Act. And they have contributed to an anti-intellectual rot, which could still be the downfall of their party in 4 years from now. So you need to be careful not to just, you know, totally cut and paste the whole shebang. Celebrities do get on TV, however. We've elected 2 celebrities president, both Republicans, and one is currently in the White House. So celebrity culture has its uses, but you want to have smarter, sharper, coachable celebrities. And one example that I gave, which people don't necessarily think about as an obvious model, is my friend Janine Garofalo, who was the main anti-war spokesman in 2003, she did not go rogue. She did not say embarrassing things. She prepped. She boned up. She knew her subject matter better than a lot of her adversaries did. She didn't stop a war, obviously, but she was a credible, thoughtful face on a very large movement. So I don't think the left can say, oh, we need to be afraid of celebrities. You need to be careful how you use them. And you need to not do every lowbrow thing that the Tea Party did. But by and large, the Women's March, there was a pretty strong first step. If nothing else, a huge morale boost. The people are not knocked back on their heels. There is a strong commitment to say, this guy's bad news, we need to find out how to stop him and throw him at every turn, and they're off to a good start.
All right, so I'm sorry to change the subject here abruptly, but I need to rant a little bit. So I caught wind. This is just me ranting here. I caught wind that there were rumors that Mike Pence would be speaking at the Right to Life March, which takes place tomorrow in D.C. It's huge, and so I reached out to their PR person because there were hints that this would happen, and if you follow Twitter closely, you could piece things together, and there were hints that this would happen. So I reached out to their PR person, who got back to me immediately first I said, are you handling PR for them? And the person got back immediately and said yes. And then I asked, is Pence going to speak? And 2 hours went by and did not get back to me. And now the New York Times has the story. Jeremy Peters, who, I got nothing against him. He's covering the conservative beat, I think, for the Times. Headline, Pence will speak at anti-abortion rally. This is what they get. This is the frustration. If you are a center-right journalist, one of your frustrations will be that no matter how much people complain about the liberal media and mainstream media bias, even when you get hired at a place that is, mainstream, people will, when it comes to leaking news, conservatives will always give it to the New York Times or Politico or something, and then they get headlines saying that it's an anti-abortion march and not a pro-life march. So that is my rant. That is my rant.
So the care and feeding of the right, you think, is not going as planned?
And this has not. This has not. This has nothing to do with Trump. This is a long-standing lament. If you are basically conservatives complain and bitch all the time about the media. And I saw this happen at the Daily Caller all the time. Like, Republican politicians and groups would generally, expect you, because you're a center-right outlet, to carry their water and to write things that make them look good. And if you ever did the opposite, they were like astounded. I can't believe that you are writing this piece saying that Obamacare is in trouble, that repealing of, But when it comes time for them to actually give somebody news, and it's not like this is a huge, juicy piece of news. This is a somewhat minor story, but it's a nice little get. When it comes time to do that, they will give it to the New York Times or Politico or the Washington Post 99 out of 100 times. And so what they're doing is they're building up the credibility of those outlets that they ostensibly have a problem with, rather than building up the credibility of journalists and outlets who, let's be honest, are not rooting for them, but are not hostile or antagonistic to them. This is a big, I was actually in Too Dumb to Fail. I briefly, very briefly, because it's not, it's not pertinent to the main thesis, but I actually talk about this problem in the book. And I mean, who knows? Who knows? Like what kind? Maybe there's like maybe this reporter wasn't leaked to. Maybe he sniffed it out just like I did and got it first. I mean, who knows? But it is a frustrating thing that we deal with.
Well, just to bring us back to the Women's March, one criticism I heard from the right was, how dare the media shower all this coverage on the Women's March, and the March of Life happens every year, and it gets it's always on page A12. And I thought that was an unfair criticism because, I mean, the March for Women is getting a lot of coverage. One, it is very large in number. It is not just in D.C., it's across the country, and it's extraordinarily unusual. And unusual is a definition of news. It's like that doesn't usually happen, therefore it's news. To have that kind of a protest the day after an inaugural, that never happens. It literally never happened before. The March for Life happens every year. The size of the marches are usually about the same, and they represent a viewpoint. You can talk about polls that say majority is pro-life or roughly a majority or slight, or it's roughly split. But the percentage of people that actually want to overturn Roe v. Wade is 28%. In that people who are nominally pro-life actually support legal abortion in certain circumstances in many cases. So there's nothing in this march that is going to be terribly newsy. It's just more what we already know. There is a good chunk of the country that is pro-life, anti-abortion. That's already baked in the cake. In 2009, when you had Tea Party protests, which were really small, they weren't thousands or millions of people. It was 50 people at a congressional town hall making a lot of noise. That got tons of coverage because it was unusual to have disruptions at congressional town halls. The numbers were not what was the linchpin of the story. So it's not like the media doesn't cover conservative activism. They cover it when there is unusual aspects to it. So I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of complaining in a couple of days that the coverage wasn't even, but it's not even for a reason.
Sorry, I'm just sending a hate email to a publicist. The person says to me, I sent them the tweet, and the person emails me and says, "Sorry, Matt, but I'm not whatever. I'm unable to. I was unable to confirm or deny that this was happening." To which I emailed back and said, your inability to confirm or deny is information that would have come in handy an hour ago. And congrats on the headline calling this an anti-abortion rally. So, you were saying, Bill.
You are seeing a window in how real Washington works, the real interplay between the media and the government. So,
no, it's conservative groups who always go and feed. Again, I'm not saying this is Woodward and Bernstein. I'm not saying this is like earth-shattering information that would have, This is a small, interesting get, but it is historic. Reagan didn't go to the March for Life. He phoned in. George W. Bush, I think, also phoned in. This is actually somewhat historic. Mike Pence physically going to the march is a big deal. It's historic. Not the biggest get in history, but it's a nice little get. But the conservative movement, the pro-life movement, whatever you want to call them, they don't give it to me. They don't give it to Tim Carney. They don't give it to David Drucker even, or Alex Pappas, or what. They give it to the New York Times, and they get a headline that doesn't talk about the historic nature. Mike Pence speaks at a pro-life march, says he speaks at an anti-abortion march. So and then they wonder why they feed the beast. Not the beast. I wish they were feeding the beast. I work at the beast. They feed the main, this big, the New York Times in this case, and God love them, I read the Times, but you get my point. And then they complain about media bias, and they complain about the framing of it as an anti-abortion rally.
Well, do you think that's deliberate? That they want to troll the left and get more attention that way?
I can't say in this instance what happened or the variables, but I can tell you that a lot of times what happens is that that a lot of times what happens is you've got two things. One, you've got people who are political operatives who work in conservative groups who came of age, like I did, in an era where like mainstream media was really important, and so you've got people who would like they would rather go to a traditional media outlet, and it's sort of feathering their own nest. Like if I am a communications person, and let's say I'm 50 years old and I'm a communications person for a Republican or a conservative group, me talking to a New York Times reporter and giving them something and developing that relationship is so much more appealing to me personally, and getting them to maybe someday they'll write something good about me than feeding it to a center right opinion journalist or an outlet that's like the Free Beacon, the Daily Beast, even the Washington Examiner, which I think does a lot of straight reporting, but they're not antagonistic. And they would have gotten, if they had given that to Philip Klein or David Drucker or Alex Pappas or Tim Carney, they would have gotten a headline that was better, and it would have probably been a bigger story. And anyway, I need to quit. I'm doing what the media does, like when they whine about the door to the press room being locked. It's the kind of navel gazing. Like this kind of thing, like would not play. This is actually me doing what I'm criticizing other people for doing. Like this kind of navel gazing about sort of personal slights is does not play well in Peoria. And so just like I'm but just like I'm pointing out that some of the progressive marchers are having sort of unintentionally turning off middle America. I mean, I think we're seeing a similar thing in the media. And I'm right now guilty of the very same thing. So I will shut up. I should not be live ranting. But this is what happens when you get burned. And by the way, if you've seen The Big Lebowski, I'm about to do what you remember what happens when John Goodman and the dude go over to that kid's house and they start beating his car with a baseball bat. This is what happens when you burn his stores. So that will not be happening. Save me, Bill. Say something.
That's all right. Let's shift. So last week myself, on the Bill. Show, we talked about how conservatives were in a jam on Obamacare, and I suggested that they'd be better off not trying to repeal it, or even better, swerving left, more subsidies, expand Medicaid, help the working class voters that Trump says he cares about. Call it Trump care and call it a day. But you noted that if you don't repeal the individual mandate, you can't plausibly say you've repealed Obamacare. So since we talked, you wrote a piece for the Daily Beast. You canvassed all the top conservative health policy wonks, and I gotta say, I mean, they're not telling you to expand Medicaid, of course, but they were not too far removed from what I was telling you. So I think the moral of the story here, Matt, is that you should just base your columns on what I tell you and don't waste your time getting on the phone.
Somebody's speaking of the phone. Now the publicist is trying to call me. But best that I not talk to that person. We could just do it live here, but best that I not do that. In fact, even if I weren't doing
that's what Howard Stern would do.
You're right. Damn it, Howard Stern would do that. That's why I'm not Howard Stern. Besides, I don't know that I have the technology. I guess I could just put it on speaker and you guys could all hear it. Damn, that would be great programming. I can't do that, but that would be great. So let me say this. First of all, I still think Obamacare is horrible for all the reasons I always have. And so I think some of the people who read that piece on the left were like, see, this shows, no, I don't think Obamacare is good. This isn't about that. Like, I think Obamacare is very bad. But the question is about sort of the repeal and the replace part and the complexity of doing it and whether or not Republicans have taken it seriously enough. And so, look, I don't want to claim that I talk to all the conservative healthcare experts. I didn't. I talked to 3 people which I would definitely consider to be experts, and one person who is a former Top Hill staffer who was very involved in this issue. And I spent literally hours on the phone, maybe 4 hours total, which is a long time. And basically what happened is I would start talking to the first guy, and I was trying to write a piece of like, here is what Republicans should do to fix Obamacare. These 3 things, these 10 things, whatever. And he would say something, and I would try to bring it back like a funnel, because part of my job as a writer is to take complex ideas and simplify them and explain them as best as possible. And I would say, well, what about this? Would this fix it? And like, oh no, that creates this other problem. And then, well, what if we did this to offset that? Oh no, well, that will bankrupt the insurance company. Like, basically, no good answer and no simple answer. And basically said, like, this is a really, really huge problem, and there are a lot of ways this could go terribly wrong. So I called up, and by the way, some of these people, several of them were people who had been helping give me information about the Obamacare rollout. I don't know that I got enough credit for this. I'm not a policy wonk per se, but I think I did some pretty good writing at the Daily Caller about the debacle that was the Obamacare rollout, and they were giving me information at that time, helping sort of school me on it. And so these are not people who like Obamacare, but these are smart people who spend basically a lot of time or all their time focusing on this issue. So I talked to another. And the first thing he says is like, this is a disaster. This is a train going off the tracks. Like there's no way this ends up good. And so basically, they all said that. Now, basically what I came to is that, that this is so complex. It's built up over so many things. It's so interrelated. The only way to maybe fix it is to basically really burn it down and start over. But that can't and won't happen. You can't have Donald Trump himself doesn't want, Donald Trump basically wants universal coverage, and he doesn't want to get rid of certain things. So within the parameters of what is politically feasible, basically I think what Republicans should do is they could slowly make a few incremental changes to make it better, but there's no political within the bounds of what is practicable and politically feasible. You're going to end up with something that is very similar to Obamacare. So the notion that this is going to be some great free market fix, even like the best case scenario that I came up with, James Capretta, who's now at AEI, who's a smart healthcare policy wonk. I ended up sort of saying that like his plan, which is not terribly ambitious, but I think would work and would prevent like a complete collapse. Even that allows, is basically just a slightly more competitive free market version of Obamacare. And so like if that's what we've been fighting for 6 years, okay then. But I do think the other thing that I didn't write, but that I gleaned from talking to everybody, is a sense that Republicans are either there's sort of two problems. Because I said, like, look, Paul Ryan's a smart guy who cares about policy, and Tom Price is a smart guy who cares about policy. And how could they not get this coming? And I basically come to two conclusions. One is that they're more focused on the budget side, than they are on the providing healthcare side, which kind of plays into the stereotype of what people think about Republicans. I also think, based on the people I talk to, there's a sense that these Republicans are naive in terms of the complexity and the seriousness of this challenge. So that's what my reporting told me. I did not plan on writing this piece. I wanted to write a piece on this is how it works. This is what Republicans ought to do. This is how we fix it. And what my reporting led me to, and again, this is opinion. It's like reported opinion. I mean, this is a column. It's not, but the people I talk to, if I'm being honest, and that's what I try to be in my writing, the conclusion I came to is that, like, this is very fraught with danger, and there's a chance that Republicans could really screw this up. And I wonder about the wisdom of tackling this first thing. And in fact, they're not. I mean, it's been pushed. There was an executive order, but in terms of the repeal and replace part, it's now been pushed to mid-February at the earliest, which is different than what they said. So that's where I'm at. The piece kind of blew up. It kind of went viral. Most of the feedback I got was very positive. There are a few people on the right who pushed back and called me a sellout rhino. There are a few people on the left who pushed back and were like, you've been wrong for 6 years. Why didn't you, Obamacare is great. And and the problem is you didn't bother to look into it until just now, So, but by and large, I think most of the feedback I got was really positive. Like, wow, it's great that a journalist is like looking into something and willing to kind of admit when the facts take him someplace he did not, anticipate going in the beginning.
I think this is an extension of the entire too dumb to fail thesis. You have a movement and a party that is not rooted in intellectualism. Right. You rant and rail for 6 years about something, and you don't really know what's under the hood. You catch the car, and all of a sudden, you don't know how to fix it. So I think you were completely on the money in your piece, and this is a general struggle that any new government's going to have, which is trying to discern, what is the upper bound of what we can accomplish, and how can we let down easy the people in our base that are expecting too much. And that's the kind of thing that, I think Obama did. I think Obama pushed the upper bound. I think Reagan pushed the upper bound. But, George W. Bush, reached too far in his second term, got too cocky, assuming, well, I campaigned on Social Security privatization. I have a mandate. I got the House and the Senate that I want. Of course I can jam this through. And learn the hard way that things are not so simple. So you don't have a president or a speaker who seems to have the capacity for restraint. Maybe Mitch McConnell would if he had his druthers, but he's largely getting out of the way these days. So I don't see how you avoid the train wreck because people are too juiced up to tap the brakes. I think that's, I think there's definitely. So I'm rolling too. So I was just saying, look, I mean, the modern healthcare system, I guess, goes back to when post-World War II, when there were wage controls. So in order to attract more talent, businesses would offer, health insurance or as a sort of fringe benefit. And then the IRS started providing like really generous tax incentives for companies to provide that. And that tied health insurance to employment, which, I don't know what there's sort of a libertarian conservative argument that says that that's the original sin. And that's why we should have health savings accounts. And there's another conservative argument that I started hearing lately, which says, no, it should go through employment. Either way, that started us down this path. As everybody knows, there was the Hillary Care thing, there was Romney Care,
a lot of what Obamacare turned into was actually hatched from Republican think tanks. And here we are. And my basic premise is that once government becomes involved in it, I'll put it this way, Bill. I think actually you had the insight that I have also co-opted. I think you originally had the insight, which is sort of the story of this whole thing, which is that Obama has shifted the paradigm to a point where it is now expected that the government is responsible for you having health care. And once that ship has sailed, then the idea of rolling that back becomes politically untenable. And even Donald Trump won't do that. And so once you're sort of locked in to that assumption about the responsibility of government, and by the way, look, I could say it sounds commonsensical, but you could also say shouldn't the government make sure we all have a house or a place to live? Because you got to have a place to live. Or how about clothes? Shouldn't how about food? I mean, you can't live without food, isn't it? So at what point does it stop?
Well, we have that. We have SNAP. I mean, it is baked in the cake that government makes sure you can have food.
So yeah. So how about housing? I mean, what you get my point. But at any event, I think you had that very smart insight, and I think that's part of the story. And look, maybe I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong here, but my sense is, if I were based on what I know, if I were advising Republicans, it would be to move very cautiously, and to do not try a comprehensive overhaul of this, to tweak things, make it. You can call it Obamacare if you want, or Trumpacare. I don't. It doesn't matter, but you can fix some things on the edges, on the margins. You can make this better, certainly. There's no doubt that can be done. But attempting to, quote, fix Obamacare in a comprehensive sort of way, I fear is incredibly risky, both in terms of making sure people are not displaced and are not left out in the cold, and just in terms of the political ramifications that it could have.
Well, your point about the World War II origins of this, this is bête noire of the left as well, the folks who want single payer. They feel that we're trapped in this employer-based system because of what happened 70 years ago, and we should have, done single payer from scratch, or we should blow up the system and do that now. And the reason why we don't is to do that after this system has been established for several decades is to tell people, I got to take away what you currently have and put you in another program, and trust me, it's going to be okay. That's a very politically risky transition. It's one of the reasons why Obama did say over and over again, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, because the government wasn't literally going to take a choice away from you. What happened, of course, those things might have happened to some folks indirectly, and therefore Obama got tagged as lying about it. The point there is you start with something that's inherently imperfect, that is very difficult to wipe the slate clean of. Anything you do to tweak it or overhaul it is fraught with its own risk.
Yeah. There's so many compromises, so many deals, so many. And look, I mean, single payer would obviously be simpler, but I think that then you enter into the fears about basically it being run like the DMV, and
that's
rationing.
Once you own it, you really own it, and then anything that goes wrong is on you. But James Carville said the other day, the first mover on healthcare always loses. And as he knows all too well from the Bill Clinton days, Obama got away with at least enacting what he wanted, but there was a political backlash to it that I think extended in the midterms and into 2016. I mean, it's because the hope on the left was once you pass Obamacare, people would be thankful that you have provided all this new health care, and people who had it would be appreciative of it. But there's so many compromises along the way that even those who do have it still grouse about it. There's just no way to get a clean win out of health care. I think Obama did the honorable thing and said, I'm going to do what I think is right. Political costs be damned. And so if you're a Republican now, you can have the attitude and say, look, I think it is right to blow up Obamacare and political costs be damned, but be aware there are going to be political costs.
Yes. There is, and it makes you, obviously Republicans have been promising to do this for 6 years or whatever. You could certainly say that Republicans got the majority in 2010 because of the promise to get rid of Obamacare. And again, as I've said many times, it's Obamacare, it's a lot of problems with it. And, without going into my anecdotal story, it has not been good for my family. Having said all of that, it is incredibly complicated and interwoven to try to fix it. And I wonder if Republicans fully appreciate the challenge to doing it. If I were them, I would postpone it. I would make an argument that conservatism isn't about comprehensive things. It's about gradual change, and I would tweak it and fix it and make it better in a very safe manner and claim victory. That's not like super exciting to say, but that's what I would recommend.
Well, yeah, there's nobody who's ever been in power that didn't have to prioritize issues and trim sails. It is just the reality of life.
If he builds the wall,
we'll see
if he builds the wall and whatever. there's other stuff that he can deliver to his base, that besides this, and then he can call this Trump care, So.
Well, I know we got to wrap things up, but the wall is something which is not going to get built end to end in 4 years, if ever. Trade is something that no matter what you do on trade, you're not going to magically create millions of manufacturing jobs in a 4-year time frame. He's got a lot of promises out there that are massive oversells. And so I don't think he's really thought through what are some real concrete deliverables that people will actually be appreciative of that I can do in a 2-year window before who knows what happens in the midterms.
Right.
This is not this is an improvisational half-baked administration that are dealing with problems that every administration deals with. Like there's plenty of history to go look at and develop thoughtful strategies that these guys have not really, I don't think, are really doing.
No, this is a common lament. You winning is losing, and losing is winning. And when you win, you have to govern. And let's see how it goes. You're almost destined to let people down. Closing Gitmo. The seas receding. Whatever you want to. Obviously, President Obama didn't accomplish all of his goals either. But this is where we are. We're at TR territory for now. We'll see how next week looks.
All right, sir. We'll talk next week. We'll see if that meter can get all the way up to Reagan or if it's going to go all the way down to Mussolini. You have to. I got to leave you in suspense.
And I'm going to try to get into a better mood than I'm in now. I feel like I was put into a bad mood halfway through this show by that scooping. So I'm going to try to get in a better mood.
I'm not going to be in a good mood.
I talk to you and I get cheered up. I become happier and soothed as as our ideas incubate. Today, not the case.
I'm not going to be in a good mood for 1,456 days. So don't expect a lot from me.
All right, my friend. Well, we'll hang in there and we'll soothe each other here in the warm, moist DMZ every week.
The DMZ hot tub.
Jump in, people. Join us in the DMZ hot tub at DMZ Show on Twitter. And listen to us on the podcast. Watch us here. Check out my podcast, Matt Lewis in the News. I'm at the Daily Beast now. Read my stuff. And Bill Scher, how can people find you?
Politico, Real Clear Politics, a little bit New Republic, and the new podcast, This Is Not Normal, which should have a new episode up next week.
Talk me down, Bill Scher. All right. We'll see y'all next week in the DMZ. Thanks.
Take care.